What's going on, guys? So today I'm making a video that's concerning Hogwarts Legacy and the drama surrounding the game, because I'm actually going to be posting some gameplay footage on the channel. And I'm getting ahead. I'm doing sort of a preemptive strike thing because, I really never know how my videos are going to do on YouTube. And for all I know, I could post something, a Hogwarts Legacy video, wake up, and it didn't just get a couple of hundred like some of my videos get, and some get as low as 50 views or whatever. But every now and then, some of them will get thousands of views, anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 views. And just in case that happens and my video does end up attracting a lot of attention, and someone does come down in the comment section basically being a hypocrite with their hypocritical protesting, I just want to make this video so that I already have a response to that, and I can just refer people like that to this video. Now, some of the journalists, I'm not going to talk about the woman because everybody already knows who she is. Some people knows what she said or the gist of what she said. And I'm just going to tell you this when it comes to her. I don't give a damn what that woman said, okay? Because first of all, that woman has no power. She doesn't have the power to legislate any laws. She doesn't have the power to start wars and kill thousands of innocent people. She doesn't have the power to just pass any laws at all whatsoever. She has no power. She has no legislative power. And even when it comes to being rich, in comparison to the people who are the puppeteers in Washington, D.C., she's an impoverished person in comparison to them. These people have billions of dollars. Those are the kind of people that I like to focus on, because though those people are not public officials, they do have money and power. So I like to when I'm focusing on people of wealth, I like to focus on those sorts of people and actual legislators who actually have the power to do things like, I don't know, make gay marriage legal, which they did because people successfully place pressure on them. I have a lot of causes that I'm anti-war. Maybe I've said something already that clearly lets you know that. And yeah, we're having a hard time right now. People who are anti-war, anti-imperialist, they're not listening to us. You guys who are fighting for gay rights and things of that nature, and I back a lot of the things that you guys fight for. I believe that you guys, because I'm not a religious person, I believe that you guys should have been able to get married a long time ago for legal reasons, so that, because I just believe if two people are together and to me it was a business thing. I think that if two people were together and one dies, the person that's left should not have such a hard time being recognized as a person who should receive everything, the house, just everything. You guys know what I'm talking about. But I'm not one of these people that's going around, in anything that seems like it's anti-gay or anti-trans or whatever, like with the restrooms. Man, look, as a person who's out here and works in the field, I can't tell you how happy I am that they finally made it where you have these neutral restrooms. Because as a person out here in the field that doesn't have access to a restroom, while I'm at work, and I have to, use restrooms in various places, I am so happy that I no longer am in a situation where one restroom is open. It's just a single restroom with a toilet and a sink, but I can't use it because it has a woman sign on it. And there's someone in the men's restroom, two reasons why I don't want to use it. Well, first of all, it's locked, I can't get in there. And then I'm wondering, do I really want to go in there after this person? They've been in there for a long time. You know what I'm saying? So I'm finally, I had an experience when they were first transitioning everything over, and I was in a hospital, and they still had their woman and man sign up. And man, I needed to go really bad. And I was waiting outside of the woman's restroom, and a lady came up and told me, she said, you can use that, right? We're getting ready to take those signs down. We're getting ready to make those unisex restrooms. And I was like, are you sure? She was like, yeah. I ran right in there. It had everything I needed. It had a toilet, it had a sink with some running water and some soap. And it still had the woman sign on it. You think that stopped me from going in there? So I'm not a person who cares about anything like that. But what I care about is the reason why those things changed is because people pressured politicians, people with power, people who make a difference in our lives. I'm not about consuming myself with worrying about, people like that woman and what her opinions are. And when it comes to protesting her, look, if you go around protesting people, look, good luck. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Purdue company still sells products in the over-the-counter products in the drugstore. They're still making billions of dollars per year off of it, just off of over-the-counter drugs. And if many of you don't know, the Purdue company is owned by the Sackler family. I think they still own it, but it was owned by the Sackler family, and they were largely responsible for the opioid crisis in this country. None of them went to prison. I think they paid like an $8 billion fine. Good luck finding somebody who's gullible enough to believe that Purdue did not make well over $8 billion globally, because they were doing the same thing in other countries. The ones that would accept it, many of them would not, especially in Europe. But there were some countries who were allowing them to do it. They made well over $8 billion. Trust me on that. So, and not just them, good luck going into the drugstore, finding any over-the-counter product that was made by a drug company that has not been caught up in some kind of scandal. Good luck with that. You're just not going to be able to find it. If you want to stop what people like what companies like Apple are doing, you have to go after the lawmakers. See, a lot of these journalists who write on these subjects, they are no longer people of courage. Like, for example, I told you I'm anti-war. Well, there have been a lot of journalists, many of them were even very popular, who have lost their jobs for speaking out against wars. That's where we are now. Many journalists who have spoken out against imperialism and war crimes, they end up getting fired. Now, some of them were popular enough to start YouTube channels and start independent careers, and some of them still write, pretty good work. And they have the freedom to still speak out every now and then. And there are a couple of these journalists who are harping on this whole Hogwarts issue, and I'm not going to call their names. Most of the journalists who are writing only write about games, but there are a couple who dibble and dabble in politics a little bit. And I remember some of them back in the day when the whole kids in cages on the Mexican border thing came up. There was a photograph that came into the light of Mexican children literally being held inside of cages. And it was made a big deal out of, and a couple of the journalists who are harping on this Hogwarts issue, they made a big deal of it. But then it was discovered that that photograph was actually taken during the previous administration when a certain person was the president that they liked. These people could not sweep that story under the rug fast enough. It was almost like that story didn't even exist. I mean, they were harping on it big time. They were banging it big time. And then when that little bit of news came out, when people found out that photograph was actually a photograph from the previous administration, these people couldn't talk. They couldn't stop talking about it fast enough. They said literally stop talking about it. So a lot of these journalists are hypocrites, and a lot of people have brought up the whole iPhone thing. The thing about it is, when it comes to support, when it comes to actually making a difference, when it comes to like subjects like iPhone and the things that they've been doing around the world, the people in Washington, D.C. are the ones who have the power to do something about that. Now, a lot of these journalists like to write about the executives because they know the executives don't really have any power other than the power of the purse strings to bribe people in Washington. But they know that they don't have the power to do anything really against them that's going to hurt them. They don't have the power to label them as terrorists or something like that, or an enemy of the state or something like that. So they choose to go after people like that. They're the types of people, if they wanted to say something against a war, they would go after the drone manufacturers and the weapons manufacturers, but they would never say anything against their favorite politicians in Washington, D.C., some of them because they're actually terrified of them and they don't have any courage. They don't have enough courage to do anything like that because they know they might pay a price for it. And not only can you bring up the iPhone thing, which I've seen a lot of people bring up, that's a good point, but ask yourself this: how many of these journalists are driving electric cars? In order to get access to cobalt, there's a lot of slavery involved in it. There's a lot of people who are being forced to work to get cobalt so that you can drive your electric cars. These journalists know this, and I guarantee you a lot of them, if you lined up 20 of them, probably at least half are driving around in an electric car, and if they're not driving around in an electric car, they're in the market for one. maybe all 20 are driving around with one, especially the ones that make good money. You know, I don't want to hear this whole thing about you don't want anybody to play this game because this powerless woman who has, like I said, she has no power. She hasn't been able to stop any of the achievements that have been made in the trans community at all whatsoever. And when I go back to the opioid crisis, that affected a lot of rich people like her. And if she wasn't affected by it, in other words, you know, some people in her family, she probably knows some people who do have family members who was affected by it, because that was the thing that made the opioid crisis so different from the crack crisis, was that it affected rich people too. People with enormous amounts of money. Mostly it was their children and family members getting hooked on drugs. Okay, so let's say if, and I'm just totally making this up, let's say if one of her kids got hooked on drugs. Well, the Sackler family didn't go to prison for it. They paid an $8 billion fine, but they didn't go to prison. They certainly broke laws. This is factual that they broke laws. The government admit that they broke laws. They didn't go to prison. Guess what? Even if this woman's child did get hooked on opium, guess what? She doesn't have the power to change the fact that the people who were responsible for her child being hooked on drugs, she's not going to change the fact that they did not go to prison. That's what I'm telling you. She's powerless. She's totally powerless. She just makes some pretty good money, you know, off of her books or whatever. But I don't care anything about words that come out of her mouth. You know, I'm not worrying about what someone's saying. There's people, I bring the battery back up again. There's people out here who are doing more than saying things to bring you the product you need to drive that car. We've got a certain person who's in the business of making those cars who actually went on Twitter and said, we'll coup whoever we want. In other words, military coup. We'll coup whoever we want. Now he ended up deleting it, but this guy's basically saying we'll go around the world and we'll take over governments anytime we want to, and you just need to shut up. Like I said, he did delete it, but imagine he had the nerve to say that. Now, there aren't a lot of journalists going around pointing that out because they're driving around in these freaking electric cars. So the irony is, a lot of these journalists who are making a big deal out of Hogwarts Legacy are probably typing these articles through an app on their iPhone while they're on their lunch break inside of their electric car. How many of these journalists support local bakeries in their community that use sugar in their products? Well, sugar is the result of slavery. I'm not going to say all sugar is the result of slavery, but a significant amount of it. There are companies who are using child labor. They are fully aware of the fact that their children being used as slaves to bring sugar to the market. They know this. How many of these journalists are going around trying to make sure that their pastries aren't a part of that? How many of them are going to either give or receive a candy made with cocoa this upcoming Valentine's Day? Well, there are numerous stories. The government has even done reports on child labor that brings cocoa to the market. There's a high chance that the candy that you'll be eating is going to be the product of some form of slavery and maybe even child slavery. Now, one thing you can count on, whatever numbers the government is giving us on this, you can best believe that the numbers is higher, okay? Because I talked about drone strikes earlier, how they were saying that innocent people being killed by drone strikes were a very low number until it was investigated and found that actually most people who are killed in drone strikes are actually innocent people. So whatever numbers the government gives you on anything, you can best believe that the number is always higher. But anyway, back to the subject, which is these hypocritical journalists. Are you going to actually try to go through the effort of, while you're shopping for candy, to see if that candy was made possible through child slavery or any form of slavery? Are you going to do that? I'm going to go ahead and answer the question for you and go ahead and tell you, no, you're not going to do that. So anyway, guys, look, I'm out of here. You guys know what it is. Stay safe.